Hey y'all, it's Sharla from the Hartselle Homestead. I'm back with you here on the Creative Retreat Kids YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be creating an entry for the reflection questions from the Sufficient Grace Kit released this month. I'm going to be using my vintage altered book and do a little bit of reflection question creative entry here. I'll be using some of the digital pattern papers. You can see I've already cut them up into little strips just to save a little bit of time. I'm going to be doing some paper piecing with that, I hope. Maybe a journaling card or two. So let's get started and see how this turns out. Okay, now every time I read this devotional, the hymn, His Grace is Sufficient for Me, stays in my head. So I knew I wanted to incorporate that somehow into my reflection entry as a reminder to myself. Now, out of all of the old hymnals that I've collected for journaling, I could not find the version of this song that I was raised with. You know, there are several hymns that have similar titles, but I couldn't find the right one that I remembered singing in church. So I just went to the internet in search of a freebie, like a printable version, because I was just going to use this as a background paper layering piece. My backup plan was to make a copy of one at church from the hymnal, but luckily I found one. Didn't have to resort to that. But then I thought maybe that's a couple of ideas for any of you who don't have access to old hymnals, or you don't go out and have flea markets around, or even can find some. Sometimes they're hard to come by. You can always go and make a copy. You're using it just for personal reasons in paper crafting, and so you might be able to download a copy, print something, make a photocopy, or if you have a hymnal and you don't want to take it apart, you could always make a copy for yourself. So to prep all of my paper pieces for this entry, I just used a blending brush and the Creative Retreat Pigment ink, Harvest Gold. You may also notice that I am crinkling the edges of some of my pages or papers, and I'm roughening up the edges of my paper with some scissors and stuff, just to make a little more texture on the edges so it's not such a clean cut. And then it also picks up a little more of the ink. I know some of that is hard to see from where the camera is to my page, but in the finished pictures, I think you'll be able to see that color just a little bit better. Now, before, as I mentioned, I cut apart the patterned paper pieces that I printed out of the Faithfilled digitals, and then I cut them into 1/2-inch strips. Now, I used a paper cutter for this. You could very well use your scissors. It doesn't have to be exact if you don't want it to be. You could cut them thinner, thicker, and kind of differ it that way. I have had several paper pieced cards popping up in my Pinterest feed lately. I probably pinned something at some point. But this has inspired me to use this paper weaving idea here in my junk journal. It's kind of a creative space for me to try things that I haven't tried before, and feel like I have that freedom to do so in here. I first thought I would cover a larger area, but then once I got my journaling card down and with the focus verse in there, the size just didn't work right. So I just simply decided to frame that as my centerpiece rather than try to cover the whole page and then put that on top of it. I really like the way that it turned out, but I ended up with a lot of extra strips that I didn't need. Now, the techniques for this entry really aren't that difficult, and it's really kind of repetitive. I prepped all my papers the same way with the blending, did some cutting, did some roughing up the edges, and then just put them all down into place. I did go around afterward. You'll see me pick up the stamp and do a little background stamping just to give another element, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. But you can arrange paper in limitless ways, and anytime that you're bringing in patterned paper with all the colors and the textures and the patterns, you can do a whole lot with just a little bit in the supplies. So while I'm working, I do want to share something that I read today. As I was looking for the lyrics, I wanted to paste them below this video down in the description box. I wanted you to see the lyrics of the one that I was working with, because I ended up covering up in my entry here. But as I came across the story behind the song, looking for those lyrics, it really touched my heart, and I wanted to read just a piece of it to y'all. I am going to link the entire article down below also, just so that you can have that for reference as well. And I'm going to try to find a video of it being sung as it was when I was, like I mentioned before, as I was being raised, like a congregational song. So I'll see if I can get that to link also. But I believe that when we can connect with the testimonies behind the lyrics of the worship music and the hymns, things that we've been raised with. We don't know, the testimony behind it. And when we can connect with those testimonies, I think that the songs can have an even deeper meaning for us, and we can connect to them. So this hymn, His Grace Was Sufficient for Me, was written by Mosie Lister. And in an interview, he is quoted saying, "This song was literally a gift from God." It was in the mid-1960s, and Lister was frustrated. He felt that he was in a season of writer's block. Now, he was known for many, many songs that he had written, not only in hymns for us to sing in congregations, but also many had been recorded and are still being sung by some Southern gospel quartets. But he said at one point he just sincerely and honestly prayed to God for his will and direction over his life and his creative talents. He wasn't sure if he was being led a different way. It went on to say that later that afternoon, after he had had some quiet time in prayer as he was driving around town, he found himself singing, "Many times I'm tried and tested as I traveled day by day." And as he went on a few more words, it occurred to him what was happening, and he was being given this new song. The chorus of his song came directly from 2 Corinthians 12:9, "My grace is sufficient for thee." I believe these thorns that Paul referred to, come in countless ways and forms to us. I believe that they're personal to us. I think that's maybe why it wasn't strictly defined or, simply defined in the Word, so that we didn't fixate on one thing. But I think sometimes that people have physical frustrations and ailments and things they deal with on a day-to-day basis. I think sometimes it may be grief or other emotional pain. Other times it may be consequences of sin that we've had in our lives. And I think sometimes it may even be our own earthly self-doubt, self-absorbed. We have so many selfish behaviors that block God's work in our lives. But no matter what our thorn is, in whatever season that we are in with that thorn, I think fully giving whatever hindrance we have over to God allows Him to open the door to work and be glorified in our lives. And that's really what a life for God is all about. More of Him and less of me. And that's kind of what I got, not only from the devotional, but also from the testimony behind this hymn. On screen here, I finished up gluing down all of my paper pieces, and I'm creating a tab here for my devotional copy that I will tuck into a hidden pocket. I just used one of the cardstock stickers and put it on a little bit of a backer to give it a little more strength, and it also cover the sticky. I spent some time here writing out a prayer also in response to one of the reflection questions, and that will complete this entry. I've enjoyed being here with y'all today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Click the thumbs up if you like this video, and be sure to watch and listen to the other ladies on the creative team as they work through this month's release as well. I invite you to join us in this study if you haven't already done so. Hope y'all have a blessed day.